Thank you, Harold. It's my pleasure to be here, everyone. So I'm Thomas, I'm the product manager of Katalon Recorder, and I want to talk to you today about kickstarting test automation, which is also the theme of today's webinar. And I'm a fan of unpacking things. So there's a lot of words that we like to say, like kickstarting test automation, AI machine learning, and all of that. But sometimes it is not exactly clear what we're talking about. And there are some things that are really worth unpacking. And considering that kickstarting test automation is the theme, I like to dive in and see exactly what it means. And then, we can start to see how it makes sense from there. But first, before I jump into that, let's talk a bit about, who exactly has this particular problem. So who needs to kickstart test automation specifically? Now, if you work in a small company or a startup, or if you're just an entrepreneur working individually, one of the patterns I've observed frequently is that startups, small companies, they tend to hire developers first, and this is for good reasons, right? Developers are the ones that actually build and ship things, and the ability to build and ship things consistently is actually very important for startups and small companies because they have to get a feedback from the market in order to improve the product, the product and the product market fit. So it is for good reason. And usually, people tend to focus too much on building stuffs that they don't focus much on actually testing the product. And you can survive test automation up until a certain point, right? But there always comes a time where user experience becomes really important even for small companies or startups. And there's this term I'm sure most of you have heard of, which is MVP, minimally viable product. And people have suggested that perhaps we should use another term, which is minimally delightful product, which I think is the better way to think about it. You don't just ship a product, you ship a delightful product. And a delightful product must have a delightful user experience, even if the functionality is minimal. And so this is really important that you can ensure the user experience of your product, even if you are a small startup or company. And so that's gonna bring us to the first characteristic, which is you are a small size and you don't have a lot of resource to spend on testing. And then this isn't because you're running things incorrectly or anything. It's just that the problem of justifying the cost of automation has always been difficult. So naturally, people would not want to spend too much resources on testing. You will either hire a tester, or you will reuse the existing developers, assign them the testing responsibilities. But either way, you're working in a small company, and you don't have too many resources to spend on testing. And in the case that you hire a tester, most likely you will hire a manual tester. Again, nothing against manual testers, they're very great. But again, it's just a problem of justifying the cost of test automation is just difficult. And if you are a manual tester, then you will have to conduct a lot of testing manually. And without a test automation solution that help you kickstart test automation easily, you have to do the same tests, the same scenarios again and again, which is very demoralizing. And it is not very sustainable because the actual value of manual testing is discovered in the engagement of between you and the product, so that you can explore the edge cases and to actually add more values than just ensuring that some things just don't break. And then that's the second characteristic, right? And the third characteristic is that you have to report the testing results to other people, to stakeholders and things like that, because you don't do testing alone in a room by yourself. We exist in an organization most of the time, and so you have to let other people know about your testing results and your analysis. And with a test automation solution, that also comes with a reporting capability. You have to write up the reports and analysis by yourself, which naturally takes a lot of time. And then that brings us to the third and fourth point, which is, you have a need to communicate to stakeholders and to analyze the test naturally. So these are the characteristics of those who need to kickstart test automation, and so that's cool and all. But what do you really want? When we talk about kickstarting test automation, and this is the unpacking that I talked about earlier, right? And so there are three needs that are very important. And obviously, when you want to kickstart test automation, when you want to transition from manual to automation, the first thing you need to worry about is how to gain confidence in a release. So imagine that the developers hand you a release that contains a lot of features, and it is your responsibility to not only to ensure quality, right, but to ensure that your organization is confident in the release, and that you yourself are confident in the release first. And then a bit later, after you are confident, you have to make your organization confident about the release. And then down the road, eventually there will come a time where you have to optimize and scale your testing, because now let's say that the development pace is relatively slowed down and things are relatively stable, and now is the time to really invest in optimizing and scaling your testing, so that you can actually increase the velocity, to make sure that the edge cases are entirely covered. But if you're talking about the time horizons, there are three time horizons that you can look at things now, a bit later, and down the road. And in each time horizon, there's a specific need that is really important. And so the most important thing right now, when you want to kickstart test automation, is to gain confidence in the release. And so this is a thing that I will, unpack further. So exactly how do we gain confidence, right? We gain confidence by just having a lot of tests and then execute them, execute a lot of tests quickly and easily. So you create a lot of tests and then you run them, and if all of them pass, then you can confidently say that, okay, this is a good build, a good release. And in the case that if some test cases fail, you are still confident in the ability to catch problems before they go into production. So even if the test cases pass or fail, they're still valuable, right? And then those are the two things that are really important. But the third thing is also important as well, which is to reuse the existing tests as much as possible. And this really helps the first 2 points, because if you can reuse existing tests, you can execute a lot of tests with less effort. You don't have to create a lot of tests to handle a lot of scenarios. And so if we look at the execution phase, we can see that we have to execute tests in a manner that is robust, which means that there must be some mechanisms, regardless of the tools, of the solution that you choose, that will help you, try different things that can help your test pass in the event that the websites change or anything like that. Of course, you have to do it to a certain extent. You have to do it manually, but it's very valuable to have mechanisms that can help you execute tests robustly. And again, another thing is you have to have the ability to execute tests just in time. So this is like, imagine that you have you have 50 test cases, right? And only 5 of them touch a particular functionality. And when a new release, a new build that contains only one feature, one functionality, you don't want to execute a whole test suite, even though that might be an option. You will want to execute the 5 test cases that touch that particular functionality first. And then that's really what I'm talking about when I talking about the ability to execute tests just in time. And then so hopefully that is clear enough. the reusing existing tests is relatively simple. You have to run the same test with different data, with different environments, and then that's a form of reusability, right? And then so hopefully that I have unpacked the concept of gaining confidence in the release into the components that are relatively easy to understand. And then so this is gonna be useful later when we talk about how do the solutions on the market actually deliver these values or solve these problems.
Excellent, Thomas.
Yep. And then so if you remember what I just talked about a little bit earlier, you don't after you gain confidence, you have to make your organization confident as well. And this really about communicating and utilizing the test results. And then so like I said, you don't do test automation in a room by yourself. You have to make your organization confident, and I think that's really important as a tester, because that's really where your values shine the most. And then further down the road, you have to have the ability to optimize and scale your testing. And it's really about having the flexibility to migrate to different platforms and solutions, because you have to think of test automation like a problem, and you have to select the tools that are most appropriate, that most fit the problem. And there's no one size fits all solutions, in my opinion. I mean, as a platform, Katalon offers something approximately a comprehensive set of solutions, but there is no one tool that can cover everything that you need. And so it's really about the flexibility to migrate to different platforms and solutions that counts when you want to optimize and scale your testing, right? And then so that's really the whole picture that I'm trying to paint here. And so in conclusion, what expectations to keep in mind? What do you look for when you want to kickstart test automation? And this is just a summary. The first thing is to kickstart with the least amount of resources and experience, because you don't have a lot of resources. And even if you are a developer, if you're experienced in coding and stuff, it's not ideal that you have to spend your time, coding a test when you can spend that time, building stuffs. And it is really about resource utilization. The second thing is to reduce time and efforts and risk to uncover defects. And this is about reusing, tests and all of that. The third point to keep in mind when you're looking for a solution to kickstart test automation is to communicate and then utilize the testing results to make your organization feel confident. And the final thing is to reduce the frictions to scale and optimize testing activities, further down the road, at a point, eventually you're gonna move to a different solutions. And so it's better to make the migration process as easy as possible. And that's really what I'm trying to talk about here. These are the things that you should be looking for, and hopefully you get the idea of why you should be looking for these things. And so I think I'm gonna hand things over to Wing, my associate product manager, to talk about how exactly the solutions on the market they deliver these values, and then we're gonna see exactly the pros and cons of different solutions. So please give her a warm welcome.